Welcome to Lecture 25 of BIB 201 Bible Doctrines 1. Today's lecture will be the beginning of a brand new doctrine, the doctrine of Anthropology. Anthropology is the study of man, the study of mankind. So the first question that we are going to ask when we get into anthropology is, what is man? Letter A. In order to properly understand what man is, we must first talk about man's makeup. Number one, man has a material nature. We call this the body. Commonly, this is called the flesh in the Bible. Now, when this word flesh is used, it could refer to one or two aspects of the material nature. Letter A, it could refer to the physical body. And the physical body is what's called the material flesh. This is your skin and bones and muscles and fibers, and this is your physical body, the material flesh. Or letter B, it could refer to the sinful nature. Now, the sinful nature is that spiritual flesh. This is that spiritual aspect of our body that is prone to sin. Now, interestingly to note, Adam and Eve were not created with this sinful nature. They did not have a sinful spiritual flesh. Therefore, they did not have a natural inclination toward sin. Then number two, not only does man have a material nature, man also has an immaterial nature. We call this the soul and the spirit, or some people just call it the soul spirit because they see it as one. Now, that'll be a topic we're going to discuss in a few minutes in a different slide. Now, interestingly, in Genesis chapter 2, when man became a living soul, a living nephesh in the Hebrew, this refers to a living being. Nephesh is actually used of the animals, but translated life in Genesis 1:20 and Genesis 1:30. So this shows that nephesh, soul, refers to one's life and personality. So before you take this where it should not go, yes, that means that animals have souls. However, the soul is not what determines whether or not you go to heaven or to hell. It's that spirit aspect. But let's talk about letter A first. The soul is the personality of an individual. This is what makes us who we are. Now, in the Bible, there are many different terms that are related to the soul. In fact, the Bible tells us that we should love the Lord our God with all of our heart, all of our mind, all of our soul, all of our strength, and all of our will. Now, we're going to take a few of those aspects and break those down. Number one, when it says our heart, the heart is the innermost part of the soul from which our motives are derived. Now, in the Bible, this term heart, when it's used, primarily refers to our motives, the reason why we are doing what we are doing. And then number two, the mind is the thought process of the soul from which our heart influences. So we have our motives in our heart, and then we have our thought process in our mind. And then number three, its will is the controlling power to choose between motives and act accordingly. So the heart is the motives, the mind is a thought process, and the will is that determining factor whether or not we're going to choose wise decisions or choose poor decisions. Then letter B, the spirit is the relational aspect of an individual toward God and righteousness. Now, man is a soul, but man has a spirit. Ephesians 2 declares that upon salvation, we are quickened or made alive. Now, this must refer to that spirit or spiritual aspect of man, since the soul and body are obviously already alive, and we are not dead in our trespasses in our body and our soul, which all of this helps us lead perfectly to letter B. There are two views concerning the quantity of man's makeup. The first view is known as dichotomy. The dichotomous view believes that man is only two parts, the body and the soul/spirit. What they believe is that the soul and spirit are interchangeable. And they appeal to the passage in Luke 10:27, where we're supposed to love the Lord with all of our heart, soul, strength, and mind, in order to refute the next view, the trichotomous view. But This verse no more refutes the three-part view as it would the two-part view, because either way it shows more than 2 or 3 parts in Luke 10:27. So now let's move on to number 2. Trichotomy. Trichotomists believe that man is made up of 3 parts: the body, the soul, and the spirit. Simply, they believe that man is made up of 2 parts in the physical and metaphysical, but practically they teach that man consists of 3 parts: the body, the soul, and spirit. Therefore, some even proclaim to be metaphysical dichotomists, but practical trichotomists. Now, this view appeals to Hebrews 4, verse 12, where it talks about dividing the asunder of soul and spirit. If the soul and spirit can be divided by the Word of God, as Hebrews 4:12 says, then they must be 2 separate entities. They also will appeal to the triunity of God and man's being created in His image as support for the trichotomy of man. In the last section we're going to start with in this lecture is letter C, views concerning the origin of the soul. There are 3 primary views that try to answer when did a soul get created. The first view is called the pre-existent soul view. The pre-existent soul view believes that the soul antedates the body. Now, this view advocates the existence of souls prior to even Genesis 1, and when a person is conceived, they believe a soul is then attached to that individual. A man by the name of Origen, O-R-I-G-E-N, used this to advocate why guilt for sin has been applied to all. That brings us to the end of Lecture 25 for BIB201, Bible Doctrines 1. And the next lecture will continue in that discussion on where did man's soul originate. Hope you enjoyed this lecture. If you have any questions, please let me know.